Samsung's Galaxy Watch lineup has seen many iterations over the years. Samsung not only continued the line, but also brought in a new variant with the release of the Galaxy Watch Ultra. I've spent 23 days using this watch, and there are some things about my experience I'd like to share. This is my 23 days with the Galaxy Watch Ultra and the most significant things from my experience so far. The first thing I noticed about this watch is that it's actually more comfortable to wear than any Galaxy Watch I've used before it. At first glance, you'd probably think that this wouldn't be a watch you could wear all day without any sort of strain or tightness on your wrist, but really it surprised me, even with its squarish circle design. I think it actually might have something to do with the new bands Samsung uses here, since instead of having them stick closer to the body of the watch, they extend out a little bit, making it so that it doesn't hug your wrist as much as something like the Galaxy Watch 6 Classic I have here. It could also be due to the type of band I'm using, or maybe it's to the fact that the watch is not made of all metal and does have what feels like plastic parts on its sides here, but nonetheless, this is just the most comfortable Galaxy Watch I've worn. Since I was already talking about it, I guess the second thing I can say about this experience is that I really like this band here. Samsung calls this the trail band, and I'm guessing that the name isn't inspired by hikers, but I will say that when hiking, this band does make the difference with how soft and breathable it is. I only own one other band other than this that came with this watch, and I decided it wasn't for me once I put it on one time. So if you don't buy this band from Samsung because it is pretty expensive, I would definitely get yourself a breathable fabric band of some sort like this trail band here. If you've ever had the pleasure of trying the rotating bezel on one of Samsung's watches, you'll know how useful and downright good it feels to turn. Up until this point, the last watch that had it was the Galaxy Watch 6 Classic, and now, although this rounded part here does look like a turning bezel, the Galaxy Watch Ultra does not come with a rotating bezel at all, and this is not the first time Samsung has taken it away since they did it with the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, another watch I owned. That being said, the third thing that I noticed is that it's actually not as much of a big deal not having it. And like I said before, I own the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro, and I remember there being a feature on it that allowed you to swipe the edge of the watch to imitate this rotating bezel. And on the Galaxy Watch Ultra, it actually feels good to do this now. I'd even say it's a little easier than using the rotating bezel, since most of the time you're compelled to do that with two fingers, even though you can do it with one with some difficulty, of course. Either way, I do think it is something that anybody should try before completely casting the idea of not having that rotating bezel away, since it seems like Samsung is getting rid of it for good this time. The fourth thing I noticed about my experience so far is that this is the fastest and most efficient Galaxy Watch I have tried to date also. In my experience, Galaxy Watches have never really been optimized when it comes to software. This leads to random lag and slowdown in situations where you don't expect it. I'm not saying the same thing doesn't happen with the Galaxy Watch Ultra, but it happens way less than it ever has had on a Galaxy Watch, for me at least. As a matter of the fact, the only time I can really say that it does happen is once the watch is starting up, which is actually what happens with my Galaxy Watch 6 Classic and has happened with all other Samsung watches I've used. Everything on the Watch Ultra just feels very fluid and like a product that costs as much as this does, or at least is approaching that cost value. The battery life on Samsung's watches has been kind of hit or miss. You can definitely get a day's worth out of one, but it's really hard not to do that by either dialing down the brightness or turning off some other battery draining feature. Now, in all honesty, my watch is used for some pretty basic stuff like checking notifications, using Google Assistant, checking the weather, and becoming my phone when I decide I want to leave my phone in the car, which I've been doing a lot more lately. I think I remember hearing most people say that this watch has 2-day battery life, but I've been able to get beyond that with my settings. In my most recent rough test, I charged the battery to 100% on Thursday, and most of the time I was using the watch for the things I said before and some other things. But in this case, I was able to get the battery to last all the way until Sunday. At this point, it was 11 a.m. and the watch was at 5% of its battery before I finally decided to put it on the charger. All of this was done with the brightness on half. When I did this with my Watch 6 Classic, I couldn't get past a day and a half before I had to charge, so battery life is definitely a huge plus, and it's definitely something I appreciate here, since the whole point of a watch is to at least tell you time and last as long as possible doing that. One thing I was curious about, and I'm sure others were, is what this button right here does, this one here on the side, the orange one. I was hoping that this might have been some sort of solution Samsung implemented to substitute for the rotating bezel, but I assure you it's not at all. What this is called the action button, and you can basically set one of 4 specific actions within the menu, but other than that, it just kind of sits there and looks aesthetically pleasing in some way, shape, or form, I guess. I think this is probably one of the more disappointing parts of my experience because I felt like Samsung could do much more with it, and that's not to say that they won't, but just right now they haven't. So the last thing I have to say about the significance of my experience so far is that I really do like this watch face here called the Ultra Info Board. Whenever I'm looking for a watch face, I'm looking for something that's going to give me convenience, and most of the times I'm not really into the aesthetics as much. The reason I like this watch face so much is that it allows you to set a gratuitous amount of complications, the likes of which I've never seen on any of the watch faces included on a Samsung watch before. You can pretty much set 7 complications, which makes having to set other widgets to get to certain things not as necessary. I'm not sure if this watch face will come to any of the other Galaxy watches, but if it's an exclusive here, it's one that I'm definitely all for, and I do hope to see it in the next iteration of the Galaxy Watch Ultra. Now, there are other things that are significant about my experience with this watch, but these are just the things that have really stuck out pretty much. I think I still have to take some time with this watch before I put together a complete review, but ultimately right now, even though the experience isn't perfect, it's still something that I enjoy using, and that's saying a lot since I feel like other Galaxy watches, previous Galaxy watches, have just been very straightforward with nothing particularly new to offer. Like I said, I'll eventually get to a review, but I do have a few other videos I want to make before I get to that, which will only give me more time to solidify my opinion and share it with you all. With all that being said, though, hopefully you learned something from this video, and wherever you are in the world, have a great day, a great afternoon, a great evening, or a great night, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching this one.